Ugh, my head hurts. This violent urge won't leave me. Regrets and missed opportunities are eating away at me. How would the monastery respond once they find out that I was responsible for the deaths of 3 people? 4 if you count the executed Githyanki. At least my allies can vouch for my shortcomings. I pray that the road ahead will be easier. But is it even possible to defeat the Absolute as a pacifist with this dark urge? At least we'll have to try. We first begin this act by respecking everybody, as well as changing around their gear and doing lots and lots of work to try to optimize this as much as possible so we can be as efficient, because I know that challenges will be ahead of us, and we need to be in tip-top shape. And we make our way to the Shadow-Cursed Lands. Now, Act 2 is not as long as Act 1 and 3, so this won't take too long to complete, but there is a lot of nuances and a lot of things to keep track of. We first get an introduction to the Harpers, who are deathly scared of this weird Shadow Curse thing, which just straight up kills a couple of them, and we have our first fight with many of the shadow beings of this land. And do not worry, all of these shadow creatures count as undead creatures, which we cannot knock them unconscious. So, this is the first time where we actually get to kill something, technically. I make sure to head on over to the Last Light Inn the first thing when I get here and meet with Jaheira, since this will be very important to get before interacting with anything else in this act. She also rightfully doesn't trust us, but we are saved by Mole, tells us about our good deeds that we had earlier, and we share a little bit of information with the artifact. Karlach recognizes Jaheira, and we meet up with Damon, who also happens to be here, which we upgrade Karlach's Infernal Heart, which allows her to touch people, and we give her a nice hug. How touching. Karlach essentially says that she would rather die than go back to Avernus, and for some reason glaring at the Ox earns disapproval. After glaring at the Ox, who is secretly an ooze, we talk with some shopkeepers and buy lots and lots of gear. And we talk with Counselor Floric, who tells us about Will's father, who is kidnapped by the Absolute and is in Moonrise Towers. Also mentions Gortash. Alex seems to know a lot about this Gortash figure who has secretly taken over Baldur's Gate. We meet up with this mysteriously broken man, who we head on over to Halsin and talk to them. It turns out he's one of his friends, Arcalian. And we promise him that we will fix him and find this mysterious Thaniel. One of the secret interactions that you can have with Jaheira if you are a rogue or a monk is that you could just straight up tell her, hey, this wine is poisoned, and just drink it anyway. Gotta show off your big dick energy, huh? We also get a little bit of exposition about this Ketheric Thorm, his children, and we meet with Raphael, who is also just chilling in the Last Light Inn, who quickly disappears. Meet up with Isabel, who gives us the blessing of Saloon, which will allow us to traverse the Shadow-Cursed Lands. But here is where things get really tricky. This fight with Marcus and all these winged horrors are an absolute bitch, and it comes out of nowhere. You barely have any preparation for it, and you can fail quite easily, which I did a couple times and had to restart a save, going back to an hour beforehand. So lots and lots of back traveling later. We finally fucking save Isabel after, well, actually killing her again, like you just saw in that clip, but we revert the save, and dear God, I absolutely hate this combat encounter. It fucking sucks. You would usually try to save Alfira, who also gets attacked, but since we killed her earlier as the Dark Urge, she isn't here. Talk with Roland, though, who tells us about kidnapped siblings, which we go out and save. And try to find Mole as well, who is in Moonrise Towers. And we meet up with a group of Harpers who want to go investigate Moonrise Towers, and we go on ahead and do so. We shortly meet up with the Drider and a band of goons who have a Moonlight Lantern, which we convince to drop and leave it for us. And just look at the face of despair as his allies just try to convince him, this is a really bad idea, don't let us out to the Shadow-Cursed Lands and just let us die, but just... And funny enough, you actually find these guys later. We free the pixie inside of the Moonlight Lantern to permanently give us the buff, so we don't need to carry it around in our inventory at all times. There are a lot of traps in Act 2 and a lot of ambushes, so make sure to keep your eye open. After narrowly avoiding some, we go to the Toll House, which we meet with Gareth the Thorm. And Here's a montage of us going to all the Thorms and convincing them to kill themselves. So the first one is a bust first attempt, but after reloading up a couple times we eventually get it. Which gives us lots and lots of gold. We then meet up with the Drider and his party from earlier, which we possess. Don't worry, they are all undead zombies. They're already dead. We head on over to the hospital, which we talk with the other Thorm. And this actually takes quite a few attempts. I end up using Lae'zel's astral proficiency to learn about charisma checks, so we can hopefully get through this encounter without having to fight them. Because, well, fighting is bad. If we just convince Melis and his goons to just kill themselves, it's a whole lot easier. Now, you can be the one to judge if this counts as being a pacifist if we just convince people to kill themselves, which we do 4 times in this playthrough. This is 2 of 4th. We also get the loot to wake up our colleague. And once we do so, we meet up with the last Thorm, Theseable Thorm. We do a little bit of a drinking game, and as a monk you have advantage with these checks, usually. But the part that really tripped me up was trying to tell him a story, since that takes performance check and I don't really have good charisma, so this takes a couple attempts. I'm considering using Lae'zel again, but I found out that monk, it's just a whole lot easier to try to survive. You don't really run into any problems drinking his alcohol if you are a monk or anything similar to that who is resistant to poisons. And then we convince Theseable to drink himself to death, which he just fucking explodes. I think that's really funny. Turns out this guy is a poison maker, and we investigate his warehouse. We then go back to Act 1 to grab a couple of mission reward items from the shopkeeper for Balin, as well as Almelium, which we'll investigate later. We also go back to the Druid's Grove to do the bag shopkeeper glitch to steal all of his loot, as well as over to the crash to take from Esther, which we also do the shopkeeper glitch with the bags. We knock him out, of course. We take a bunch of loot from all of the locked chests that we've been gathering throughout our adventures throughout the town in Act 2. And this is really satisfying. Once we wake up Art, who this cutscene glitches out almost every time I've gone through it, we can finally get to starting to recruit Halsin. We have almost completed a story. Karlach congratulates us and feels pretty good about her situation. We stop this person from committing suicide by walking into the Shadow-Cursed lands, and we begin Shadowfell. Not exactly. We let Halsin go into the Shadowfell to hopefully find Thaniel, and we defend the portal from all of the shadow creatures. Now finally, this is the only part where we actually get to use spells. Because there is a fucking ton of enemies here. This area is super satisfying to just watch, as all of these zombies just waltz into our spells. They just die. Wall of Fire is definitely the MVP here. Just fireballs left and right. Watching them walk into the Wall of Fire is just hilarious. And we easily take out like way more than 30 enemies in this encounter alone. Which, definitely prepare a bunch of spellcasters for this, because otherwise you're going to have a really bad time trying to defend the portal. And again, I would like to mention, all of these enemies are undead zombies, which even if we tried, we can't knock them out peacefully without just dying. So we really don't have a choice here. If we really want to continue with the story, we have to make amends and compromises. If they're zombies, they're already dead. They weren't alive. Shadowheart is convinced that Lady Shar is testing her and her faith, and she really wants to find this weird artifact. Once we let Halsin investigate the Shadowfell portal and find Thaniel, he finally joins our party. Quite late, but also early enough to where we can actually use him in Act 2. Level him up, keep him as a moon druid, give him some gear, respec his skill points, and we head on our way. Eventually, once we find Thaniel, we talk to him a little bit to try to ease him away. And he likes ducks. And you can also talk to him about your mortal fear of krakens, which I believe to actually be a reference to the Divinity Original Sin 2, who's one of the main villains is a kraken. While waltzing around, I get ambushed by all of these shadow-cursed plants, which weirdly, these plants count as plants, not as undead. So when I fireball these guys, turns out, yeah, they're not undead, and I need to revert the save. I talk with Oliver, who we try to convince him to go back to Thaniel, but he just fucking ditches us and leaves. Once we follow through the portal that he's in, we get ambushed, and look, Arabella's just chilling back there. How quaint. After fighting through all of his play date buddies, I don't really know, as well as we fight his mom and dad, okay. And if you have a wild-shaped druid while talking to anybody, this happens. And we actually use enlarge on Halcyon, so he's just fucking ginormous during this cutscene. And I just could not stop laughing. I wish I had my microphone not muted. And I forgot to bring Asterion here to talk with Raphael so he can tell us about the runes on his back, but that's something that I discovered way later. Luckily, these Kuotoa down here are all undead, so we farm a little bit of XP from killing them, or technically killing them, as well as gaining their loot. We don't have footage, but we do find Arabella's parents, who we revealed to be dead. And once Oliver and Thaniel go back into one body, Halcyon is relieved. Once we decide to head on over to Moonrise Towers, Mizora tells us about the Zariel's asset, which we must rescue from Moonrise Towers. Luckily, we brought Will around this time so we can get a little bit of extra cutscene, and we tell her to break the contract once we find them. Because there's a loophole that Will is forced to kill demons, but not save them. We prove to the shopkeeper that we are tough by showing them our busted knuckles from punching people, and he gives us a 100% approval rating that allows us to buy all the shit at a really low discount, which I just merchant glitch him later, once we fight him. I forgot to merchant glitch Roya Moonglow, since she doesn't actually join the fight again when we read Moonrise later. And we talk with Zarel, and we walk into the throne room. Into easily one of the coolest cutscenes in the entire game. I'm just gonna let the entire thing play out right here.
We're too close to the ending and the new beginning. I can coddle failure no longer. Kill them quickly.
What? No! You creaking old bag of shit! I'm so sorry, my lord. She's an unbeliever outside my control.
Try again. Dispose of the rest as you see fit.
That is how you introduce a villain. Due to the dismay of our party members, we let the goblins go because we are pacifists. We're not just gonna publicly execute these guys. And we get a little bit of a hint about our past here. We feel like we've been here before. We find out that knowledge about the artifact is quite widespread within Moonrise Towers and all the Absolute's army. Here I am trying to convince Sorel to give me more information and power, but she doesn't provide any. I wonder if it's possible to make her turn away from the Absolute, because she seems to be quite anxious about the Absolute, and Balthazar also says that she seems quite unloyal. I stumble upon a couple of gnolls inside of the kitchen. I head on over to the ruined battlefield to find He Who Was, who gives us a little bit of a mission to go and find a ledger. Because apparently this woman right here that he has in his ritual circle is a criminal and has executed multiple people to the Absolute. We find out about his true intentions and we turn the fight on him instead. We knock him out and take out his little albino companion, and we free Madeline. You also get a little bit of exclusive dialogue for being a monk. Asterion then tells us a little bit more about his vampire spawn and his backstory. We have a little bit of a chat with Arabella, and Karlak likes Will. Here's something that gave me a little bit of a tear to my eye, because usually Minthara is here if you keep her alive, but because we played on patch 1, you couldn't knock her out to complete the quest, so we go down over to the docks to take a couple of the tadpoles and use it on ourselves. We head on over and talk with the prisoners to try to stage an escape. The Iron Hand gnomes are here, as well as some of the tieflings from the grove. We need to give them a bludgeoning object so we can break through the wall and escape. The warden, however, has multiple eyes and guards around the place, so distracting them is going to be quite difficult. While I was snooping around, I found this weird hole that brings you down to the Illithid lair, and I didn't know if I was supposed to be here this early or not, so I just reloaded the save and backed out. Although, you can actually explore this area early. We give the Iron Hand gnomes a bludgeoning object, and after quite the rigorous combat encounter, we eventually escape. And trust me, this took me about a couple hours. And right here in this clip you can see me use my expert detective abilities to find the invisible bitch. On one of my saves, during one of my attempts, I had everybody distract the guards by talking with them as well as playing music. I was able to have Asterion sneak past and ride the boat back to safety. This made it so I didn't actually have to take out any of the guards or fight them in any way. I was able to just fast travel out of there. Talking with the gnolls also gives us a little bit of gold that isn't quite helpful, but we'll need them in Act 3. Around this point is when the Dream Visitor actually starts trying to seduce you. And during one of my long rests, Galactus Fell came back and was trying to convince me to kill Isabel. And obviously I can't do that, as that would kill many people, and he should know by now that I'm a pacifist. Although something very strange happens when you actually go to Isabel, and you can tell her that you have an instinct to kill her, and she appreciates your honesty as well as your attempt to spare her life. I'm just taking a bunch of long rests in a row here so I could try to trigger some events. And I came across this interaction, where if you are in a relationship with Will, you can dance with him, which I think is really sweet. You have this goofy little groove thing whenever you try. And during one of the long rest events as well, Scratch will randomly give you an item, which he gave me a bone, and you can actually throw it and he'll take it back to you. Look at this shit. This is why this game is Game of the Year. During one of my long rests, I ran into an event that I've actually never ran into before in any of my playthroughs. Apparently, Gale sulks by a lake and watches the stars as he anticipates his death. I never had him kill himself to the Netherbrain before, but it's pretty sad and surprising that there's a cutscene here. Although it is to be expected since he constantly talks about his depression throughout the game. And you can have the owlbear cub show up at your camp. I'm pretty sure I even went and beat up the owlbear during this playthrough, so I'm really surprised that the cub still showed up. Gale thanks us for meeting him by the stars. I then long rest again and heal the owlbear cub. And I'm pretty surprised that I never got this cutscene in any of my other playthroughs, but here it is. Me getting the achievement for petting both of the animals at the same time. I run back over to Act 1 to see if there's any long rest events there, but there isn't. I then go back to Omelium to drink the weird potion thing to upgrade my tadpole. We have this cool little wholesome scene with Withers, and he blesses Arabella to awaken her druidic powers. And then I notice something. I forgot about this! Why isn't this enabled? I bet my attacks would have been doing way more damage. Yes, they would have. Fuck. Oh my. This does as much damage as my staff. It does more damage to my staff. Oh my god, I wish I would have known that earlier. Well, luckily I haven't ran into anything like too crazy. But we're about to find the night song, so I guess. Damn. Wish I would have known that sooner. Yes, my punches do get a lot stronger after I activate the ability, and we save Roland, who doesn't seem quite happy about it. We also head on over to the Sanguinaire Potion Maker, and we get our own custom potion, which actually gets quite clutch when we fight up against Balthazar later. And I don't know why Asterion just sucked out our blood, even though I clicked on the dialogue option that says, do what you want, I don't really care. That's not what I thought was going to happen. But we get the potion anyway, and we give it to Lae'zel. And I think I am almost complete with Act 2. So I head on down over to the dungeon, and I go to the Gauntlet of Shar. I heard this is everyone's favorite location, and it is mine too. Balthazar's goons pretty much just spot us immediately upon arrival, and we fight a couple of these Void Rift things and take out some of his undead skeletons, which for some reason doesn't really piss him off. I wish I had more footage of me just absolutely destroying the Void Tremors, because I pretty much just destroy him on turn 1. You can fight Balthazar right here so he doesn't show up to have conflict with the Night Song, and you could pretty much just skip that entire encounter, but I think it's really cinematic and I like it, so it's whatever. Although something weird is that I clicked on I'll see what I can do, but I was just told by Shadowheart to just keep it calm and just play along. When I do play along, I get in trouble for it, which fucking stupid. So you can click on the rats and study their chi, which is really funny. So as the game says that they are awfully powerful and violent. Now here with Yrgir, we're actually probably going to run into another technicality death, because we are technically responsible for the death of the Displacer Beast, Yrgir, as well as his other goons. But technically, demons and devils, whenever they die, they just respawn back at the hell that they came from. Same for Celestials, so their deaths don't really count. But yes, we do end up getting the Displacer Beast killed. It isn't technically us, but we also technically assisted. You can flame me as much as you want, but it is still technically the most non-violent action. As well as Rat King over here. Now, we've gotten to everyone's favorite interactable. I see clips of this on TikTok all the time. Yes, I went up to the spider meat and I also licked it. I know. I even did it twice to see if there was any other interactions. I do miss quite a bit of the Gauntlet of Shar, because while I was recording Gauntlet of Shar, I was talking with people on Discord, so I only just have a couple clips without just the voiceovers and people yelling in the background, so just dig how you leave it. Interesting enough, the Monk Amulet actually activates here, and has a little bit of unique dialogue, which I've never seen before. I'm doing a puzzle.
There's puzzles in this game?
Yes.
I don't want to play anymore.
We do fight quite a bit of undead here as well, but of course there isn't really much that we can do against that. And once we find all of the orbs, we head on down to the portal to the Shadowfell. Having done everything in the act, I'm feeling confident enough to end it right here. So, I head on down into the portal and we begin the final parts of Act 2. This is the point of no return. The moment we spot Balthazar there, we immediately tell him to fuck off, and he doesn't. We try to convince him that killing people is bad, but then he just says, well, what if I kill you? And he really does. I actually have a couple attempts, because pretty much all of our spell slots were used up during this fight. So it got a little difficult trying to fight up against all those undead, but once I just ran myself over and just 1-2 tapped him with my monk abilities, it was over quite quickly. And once we meet the Night Song, turns out, whoa, the Night Song's a person. Shadowheart has vowed herself to kill the Night Song, but we tell her, remember our teachings. We are pacifists. Never kill anybody, not for any reason, unless they're undead or constructs, then they technically don't count. She hears our ways of the monastery and she thinks, well, I'm gonna trust you. And she throws away the spear. I'm proud of you, Shadowheart. You've learned so much.
Mother of the so-called Night Song, the Night Song is no more!
And that is the end of that. We talk with Shadowheart, who she takes refuge back at the camp. We gather a couple of our allies, we talk with them, and we head on back over to the Lies Slag Inn. Isabel tells us that Jaheira and everybody is fighting in Moonrise Towers. After talking with Damon to refreshen up our gear, we head on over, and we begin the assault on Moonrise Towers. And I found possibly an oversight. If you attack the people at Moonrise Towers, then the Flaming Fist will actually get angry at you and attack you when you do it in the cutscene. Which, what? Why do they do that? After reloading a couple saves, because I accidentally killed people with spells, finally show off our abilities, and we take down the entirety of Moonrise Towers, including getting a proper fight with the Warden, which we absolutely just demolish. 100 damage in one turn. Poor Warden didn't even see it coming. Once we fight the weird wizard on the top of the tower, we head on over and talk with Ketheric Thorm. You can actually have an interaction here to convince Ketheric Thorm to just kill himself and just move on to the Illithid colony fight immediately. But since we freed the Night Song, you technically can't follow up with that, as right before he kills himself, Dame Aelin just shows up and attacks him. I forgot to clip most of the footage for the fight, other than this one time when I missed 4 attacks with Lae'zel in a row, which got me quite heated. Once we finally take him out with a couple of good smite spells and lots of missed attacks, a giant Illithid tentacle erupts from the ground and steals Dame Aelin. Jaheira finally becomes available, and we recruit her on the spot, turn her into another moon druid, and then we don't use her at all, and we bring a couple different party members. We walk around and eventually find Zevlor and his goons, and for some reason Lae'zel disapproves of saving Zevlor. I don't know, that doesn't make too much sense. And we also save Mazora, which she gives us a special rapier for helping her out, and possibly frees Will from his contract. Here is a Dark Urge event that most people will probably miss. If you talk with the Bone Daughter inside of the Illithid colony, she reveals that the Dark Urge is actually the very first victim of the Absolute. She also reveals that it used to be some sort of a king or queen in the actual Moonrise Towers before I got taken over by the Shadow Curse and Ketheric Thorm. After that, we head on down to fight the final boss of Act 2. Get a little exposition, and we finally get our first impressions of Gortash and Orin. And we get to see the Netherbrain for the first time. Gale tells us once again that he is ready to sacrifice himself for the greater good, but it does not take much convincing. It doesn't even take an ability check. We spared Gale's life, and now we want to spare yours, Thorm. It is not too late to turn back. And he says, yes, it is too late to turn back. Dame Aelin just attacks him. First part of the boss fight is not too particularly hard. The hardest part is all of the necromancers that go around and just fire blast you. The real challenge of the boss fight is when the aspect of Merkel shows up. This is quite the epic cutscene here. I really like watching this. Vlaakith, Merkel, these giant figures for final cutscenes of the acts. Super cool. Too bad that actually I prepared a while for this boss fight, and we used the Perilous Stakes thing on him, which gives him vulnerability to everything but heals with attacks, and we just absolutely fucking cream him in about 2 turns. Doesn't even get a chance to heal or do anything. And I also have a clip of Lae'zel missing 4 times in a row. After that, Merkel is defeated, and Ketheric Thorm is also defeated. Which means the Moonrise Towers is now gone and the Shadow Curse is no more. We find this weird little gem on his body, and we find out that this is actually a Netherstone. One of 3 parts that we need for this mysterious crown of Karsus, which Gale gives us quite the exposition for. As well as the Dream Visitor isn't a Dream Visitor anymore. She shows up, like, actually. All of our companions praise us for the help at defeating Moonrise Towers and freeing the land of the Shadow Curse. We go back to Moonrise Towers to talk with some of the companions and some people who have taken it over and now excavating the place. Withers tells us more about the Dead 3, and he gives us a little bit of insight on how to defeat the 3. We finally initiate Jaheira to join our camp, and everybody approves. Here is where the game essentially tells you to recruit as many party members as you can for the final battle. We fight a couple of Githyanki that are blocking our path to Baldur's Gate, which they come back later anyway. Karlach gives a little bit of more insight on who Gortash is and how he became a lord. Halsin tells us how thankful he is to work for us, and we tell him, you too, buddy, you too. Anybody listening, all of Halsin's voice lines are glitched out when he is in combat. Ilarion, please fix them. We bring Shadowheart to talk with Dame Aelin as well as Isabel, and it's quite the wholesome interaction. We find out that the Shard disciples actually pretty much groomed and kidnapped Shadowheart and convinced her that her father was a wolf who was trying to attack her and just kidnapped her parents. After that horrible realization, we get to watch as the Shadow Curse lands can finally heal. We gaze upon the land and we think about all of the dead that we have finally put to rest so that they may never be disturbed again. The land is healed and the world is a better place. We're finally getting ready to head on over to Baldur's Gate. Now, isn't this a set piece? After a long rest, we get a little bit of a cutscene with Orin and Gortash, who gives us a little bit more exposition. Importantly, we learn about the Steel Watch. Asterion finally feels like being useful to the main plot of the story, and we actually can finally accomplish some of his personal quest. While we are sleeping, however, we are interrupted by Githyanki, and the Dream Visitor tells us to head inside of the artifact and fight off some of the Githyanki knights. Turns out, Orpheus, the Prince of the Comets, who is the main opposer of Vlaakith, is actually trapped inside of the artifact as well. Turns out the Dream Visitor is none other than a Mind Flayer themselves. We reluctantly agree to help. He basically tells us, help us or die, and can't go wrong with that. I actually find the Githyanki monks to be quite the powerful combat encounter. I'm really surprised that it gives you this early, considering at this point you pretty much only have about 2 or 3 attacks per turn, and they have about 4. We ask him who he is, and he says that he is somebody named the Emperor. He is a renegade who broke free from the Absolute when the Absolute was just a newborn Neverbrain, and it has been dwindling and growing in power in Baldur's Gate for years, possibly even decades. He also asks us if we are willing to evolve and turn into an Illithid, or a half-Illithid, because Illithid are significantly more powerful than regular people. Says that it is okay to decline his offer. However, we surprise him and all of my allies when I accept to take the Astral Tadpole. I choose to evolve. The only way to save others is to help yourself, and if I am not powerful, I cannot give power to the people. I have failed multiple times to keep people and creatures alive. Cannot risk anybody dying in my hands anymore. If I choose to evolve, I can save many, many more lives, whether they want to be saved or not. This is the face that is going to save your life. This is the face of a true pacifist. I unlocked some of my new evolved powers. I hope that my allies will be willing to take the Astral Tadpole as well. Till then, we rest up. I don't know what their opinions of me choosing to half-evolve are yet. I already know this will be a decision that will be praised. My allies refuse to take the tadpole, refuse to agree to save more and more lives. All I can do is simply choose not to save them. I hope that eventually when I reach the city, finally be free from the Absolute. Thank you for watching. I hope I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye everybody. Please subscribe.